Hi everyone, back to Evermore YouTube channel. It's Chris back with the aftermath. This is the show we jump on and do after the dust has settled from the instant post-match reaction to Newcastle United's most recent game, and that was an absolute slapping, a humping, a humbling down at the Etihad. 4-0 Newcastle United were beaten comfortably against Manchester City, and a Manchester City who's not really fired that much this season, but unfortunately for Newcastle, a Manchester City that was allowed to refresh in the transfer market and sign a 60-odd million quid winger stroke striker who scored a hat-trick against us in about, 19 minutes in the shape of Mamouche. Newcastle United couldn't do that or wouldn't do that. Let's not get into that. My word, it'll be like opening a can of worms. But I'm going to get stuck into the aftermath of the game here. I've had a good chance to think about things, consumed a little bit of content about it. Hysteria and hyperbole probably isn't going to be the answer here. But there's been some home truths, I think, highlighted once again, or maybe, home truths that were masqueraded in the elation of beating Arsenal and getting to the Carabao Cup final not too long ago there. And, the realization that this Newcastle United squad is grossly imbalanced. Now, I'm going to get stuck right into this in a minute. My two main gripes here for the aftermath is starting off with the defence. Now, we started off in a shape that was similar to the Arsenal game where we played that three at the back. I couldn't really work that out when I first started watching, even when I did the post-match. It wasn't until I went away and had to think about it, consume some of the content, I realised, oh yeah, that's what we were doing. That's why Kieran Trippier was left as the last centre-half, even though he's like 5'7", and he completely misread the flight of the ball for Mamouche's first goal. But we tried to do the same thing that we did against Arsenal. But when you go back and look at that first goal again, Fabian Schär is in their half, not our half, and the ball comes over the top, and Trippier, the shortest lad on the pitch, is beaten quite easily by a pretty routine Route 1 ball. A Dan Burn, a Sven Botman, a Fabian Schär probably doesn't get beat with that. They'll probably get the head on that and head it out for a throw. Now, City probably would have eventually scored, but not like that. And that's a big concern for me because the tactics that were implemented against Arsenal, the players seem to have more belief in it, more fitness, more fight, more desire to play it. They didn't seem to have any of that at the Etihad yesterday, and that's a big concern. But I think the biggest highlight and the biggest reality check, I think we called the post-match after the game for me, is just how aging our defence really truly is. City looked lively because they had, Mamouche, who was in his 20s, Savinho was in his 20s, pace, movement, ability, endeavour. We don't have that in our back four. Our back four is aging massively. And I was looking through it. 3 of the back 4 were over 32 years old. Kieran Trippier is 34. Trippier is a Burn and Schär of 33. And Lewis Hall, God bless him, isn't blessed with pace. I'll get into that a bit more detail in a second. But when you're up against a team that's got movement and got a bit of pace, and zip across the pitch like that, in the shape of, Savinho and Mamouche in particular, and Haaland's no slouch either, we were always going to be up against it and find it difficult. City on Arsenal, I know Arsenal beat City 5-1, a couple of weeks back there, but City had the capability to tear that team to pieces. And the Sven Botman thing's really bugging me because I think I heard there's a sign on True Faith that said, is he becoming like Ledley King, which frightens the shit out of me because, is he just going to be this absolute Rolls Royce of a defender that we can only wheel out once every 4 or 5 weeks and he has a blinder and then he has another strain and he's out again? We can't have that. But the realization, once again, was the failure in the summer to not sign a right-sided centre-half to take Fabian Schär's position. Fabian Schär, so this isn't just based on yesterday. Fabian Schär has been honking for the majority of the season. His legs have massively going. His positional sense is awful. His lackadaisical passing, he just gets us in trouble time after time. Those kind of 40, 50-yard crossfield pings have been replaced by, things that are so fucking low height you can't even see them on a radar. They hit people in the bollocks. That's how slow and low his passing is now. And it's scouted. Even his long passing, people drop 4 or 5 yards and just take it on the chest and thank you very much. Or head it out, thank you very much. As a player, he's aging massively. And all this talk about giving him a new contract, I don't see why. I really don't. Based on this season, he's been terrible. He really has. He's gone backwards as a player. We should be looking to improve on that position, not reward the guy with another contract to sign until he's 35 years old. This is the biggest problem that we have in this squad. We're hanging on to players who are going past their prime, past their peak. And listen, Fabian Schär has been one of the best signings this club has ever made. 3 million quid we signed the guy for, and he's been fucking outstanding. But his time is done. We should be looking to replace the guy. We should even have that replacement there already. Somebody should be playing right-sided centre-half. We threw all the chips in for Mark Guehi in the summer and seem to have no plan B. Now, was that Eddie Howe's stubbornness or was that Mitchell's failure? Nobody seems to be wanting to answer that question. No journalist seems to want to ask that question either. And it won't get answered by the club because they don't talk to you. So this is a real problem. But that defensive unit in the squad is getting older and it's getting slower and it's getting more suspect to being penetrated by not even top players in the Premier League, just half decent players with pace. I'm recording this before the Forest game. We've got Elanga to worry about with his pace as well up against that back four. I'm going to get into Lewis Hall in a minute and say why I think he had such a bad day at the office the other day as well. But that's a major problem for me. We need to be building this defence around Tino Livramento, Lewis Hall, Sven Botman, and stick a right-sided centre-half in who's got a bit of mobility, a bit about them, speed, quick reactions, decent on the ball. It doesn't have to be Mark Guehi, but I'd welcome him. If we did sign him, someone like Tomori at AC Milan, they're talking about, was it the lad from Bournemouth, that we didn't sign in the fucking summer for 15 million quid. Why don't we sign him? You know what I mean? Now they're talking about trying to go for him for 50 million fucking quid. I can't see that happening. But with all the changes to the rules and the potential financial wiggle room we may have, maybe we can go out and buy 2 or 3 younger, better defenders because we need to, because those lads are aging out. They can't do week in, week out. They can come in and they can do good performances, in terms of the Arsenal game and things like that. But you can't ask the same guys to do that on a Wednesday and do it on a Saturday who are 33, 34 years old. It's just not going to happen. That's not how football works. The older you get, the more strain that physical demand takes on your body. And you could see that with that back four yesterday. I mean, Dan Burn, God bless his heart, would throw himself in front of the fucking Metro to stop a goal. But he's getting older as well. He's creaking. He's covered in bandages, fucking head to toes like mum rather ever living. But he keeps going and he keeps trying, Burn. And he was probably the better of the lot of them at the weekend there. But Fabian Schär shouldn't be in the squad again for me for the whole fucking season. Trippier again, he's got the nous and the experience, but he hasn't got the legs. He got hooked off at half time. Tino came on and looked a lot better, but we need consistency from Tino as well. He goes off the boil a little bit, but it's a real worry that the aging element of that back four is a massive, massive concern. It's a huge failure by the football club that they have not addressed that issue. I know we've had financial restrictions and everything else as well, but we could have got somebody like the kid from Bournemouth. But players like that, we could have got him for 15 million quid. We could have got Morgan Rogers for 15 million quid, Liam Delap for 15 million quid. What the fuck were we doing in the summer? But going back to the defensive unit in particular, those kind of players, Bournemouth sniffed them up. No disrespect to Bournemouth, they're doing really what amazing season they're having. But Newcastle United's a bigger draw than Bournemouth. Why the fuck didn't we go in for these lads? Because we're hanging on to these players once again, too much sentimentality. You look at the whole defensive unit. Schär's 33, Burns 33, Trippier's 34, Lascelles is 31, Kraft's 31, fucking Target's 29. They're all aging out. Yes, we've got Tino who's 21, we've got Hall who's 19, we've got Botman who's kind of mid-20s, right? But the rest of the defensive unit is going past that point of being too old. Sort this shit out, Newcastle. Get in some quality defensive players who are, about to hit their stride or peak, or in their peak already of 25, 26 years old, 5 or 6 years younger than those players. They can go Wednesday, go Saturday, go Tuesday, go Wednesday, whatever it may be. In European football and Champions League football, they can do that. If we get to the Champions League, which I think is looking like even more of a difficulty with every single week that passes, these lads are going to be 35 years old, practically, when we play in the Champions League next season. They can't go week in, week out, Eddie. Fuck me. They'll be walking around in Zimmer frames, getting injections mid-game for painkiller relief. They're too fucking old, man. We can't rely on these players week in, week out. That needs to get sorted. But going back to the issue I was talking about earlier about Lewis Hall. Lewis Hall has been phenomenal this season. Brilliant defensively and offensively. But there's one thing that Lewis Hall does not have in his locker, and that is pace. He's not blessed with pace, right? That's fine. Certain players cannot be blessed with pace. and have an absolutely brilliant career. David Beckham wasn't the quickest player. He had a fantastic career. He was able to whip the ball around players and even, track back and tackle and all that kind of stuff. Michael Ballack, no pace at all. Some players can have a great career without pace. And I think Lewis Hall can do that as well. He doesn't have to have blistering pace, but what he has to have is protection and cover. And he didn't have that against City. Gordon was off of it. And with the massive hole that was Joelinton in that midfield, I'll get on to Joe Willock and Lewis Miley in a second. But without having Joe Willock there, we're right back where we were when Dan Burn was left back. No protection, no cover. And I said it shouldn't happen. We shouldn't have to sacrifice 2 players to have Dan Burn at left back, right? But this is where we are. Lewis Hall is a better left back than Dan Burn. Fact. I'm sorry, I don't care who comes at me in the comments. That is fact. That's footballing fact. That Lewis Hall is a better left back than Dan Burn. Dan Burn is a better centre half than Lewis Hall because that's his fucking position. But if you want a left back with pace, go sign a left back with pace. But we don't have a left back with pace. We have Lewis Hall. Now, if we want to go and get a left back with pace, there'll be left backs out there who are fast as fuck. We can go bring him in. They can play second fiddle to Lewis Hall. We can interchange them. When you're up against somebody like Savinho who's blistering pace or Alango blistering pace, you can bring in your quick left back to fill and play that position. Is called rotating your squad and using players to their strengths. And we don't do that because we can't do that because the squad is still wafer thin because of all the other bollocks in the background, right? If that goes away in the summer, add while you can before the Premier League go back and come up with the latest rules to fuck Newcastle United over. I've already seen some of the red cartel loving journalists wetting their pants like Sam Wallace. They're going to destroy the competitive nature of the Premier League. You wouldn't be saying that if it was Manchester United with all the money or Liverpool, the fucking wet wipe. But going back to Newcastle and the aftermath is what we're here to talk about. Lewis Hall needs protection when he's up against pace. He'll need that against Nottingham Forest as well. And Joe Willock, sure as shit, didn't offer that yesterday. Neither did Anthony Gordon, by the way. I thought Gordon was poor. Gordon normally stands up and delivers in big games like that. He was dreadful. It was the worst game I've seen Gordon have against a top 6 side for a long, long time. And Gordon will know that. He's better than that. And he wasn't good yesterday. He was making wrong decisions, bad passing, lack of vision, lack of awareness. They were all bad. They were all bad, really. I think only one player comes out with any kind of credibility. Arguably, Tino was a bit better as well, to be fair. Certainly, the bar was low. But only one player comes out with any credit, which I'm going to talk about him in detail in a second. But the whole situation with Lewis Hall left back is if he's up against it with pace, because Burn hasn't got pace. If Botman's there, Botman's got a bit more speed. Botman can help out Hall in that position. But if you're going to play Dan Burn at left back and Dan Burn at left centre back, even Christ, he was still right there, and Lewis Hall at left back, you need some protection from the left side of midfield, either on the wing with Gordon or inside with whoever plays if Joelinton isn't there. And that was definitely lacking in this game. Joe Willock. Let's get into Joe Willock. I like Joe Willock. I think Joe Willock has been a good player for us when he's been fit. But recently, when has that been? He's slipping in the same vein as Callum Wilson for me. Unavailable. Anthony Gordon said the best ability is availability. And Willock hasn't given us that. He's come back, he's broke down. He's come back, he's broke down. He's come back, he's got his opportunities. He's not taking it. And time after time after time, he's not took his chance. Same as Sean Longstaff hasn't took his chance. Now, that midfield 3, when everybody's fit, is Sandro Tonali, Bruno Guimaraes, and Joelinton, because they're the best 3 players in the squad to play in a midfield 3. No doubt about that, right? Joelinton has his issues on the ball, but as an overall package of a midfielder, the aggression, the powerhouse, what he brings to the team, how he elevates everybody else around him, Joelinton's perfect to be in that midfield 3 alongside Bruno and Sandro. Joelinton is injured and he's out. So you look at the rest of the midfielders that are there, and then he keeps giving chances to Sean, to Willock. I mean, Sean now has slipped right down the pecking order because Sean just doesn't seem to want to give anything anymore. One thing about Sean Longstaff, you always used to say was the desire's there, the hunger's there. He'll run all day long for you. I used to call him Sean Longstaff. He doesn't do that anymore. He's not running all day for anybody. I watched him in the Birmingham game. He barely broke into a jog. He looks tired. He looks fatigued. He looks down. He looks like he doesn't want to be in a black and white shirt anymore. And that's a huge problem. I know Sean has suffered mentally as well, and he's been very open about that. And I take my hat off to him. I won't take this off because my hair's a fucking mess. But I take my hat off to him in that regard. But maybe Sean's struggling right now. Maybe Sean needs a little bit more support off the pitch as well, mentally, to get himself back into a game. But Sean ain't ready to step into Joelinton's position. Joe Willock was given the chance against City, and he was terrible. He didn't offer enough offensively, didn't offer enough defensively as well. I was saying it in the preview. Fair play. Some people said to me in the preview, I don't think you're right. Then they've come back after the game and said I was right. Lewis Miley should have started that game. Miley is a much better centre midfielder than Joe Willock is right now, and offers more than both Joe Willock and Sean Longstaff. And that is factual. Everybody's now coming around to this idea. I can see it on social media. Even the manager turned around and said the only bright spark in the game was Lewis Miley's performance. He was brave off the ball and on the ball. And he said the rest of them should look at him for an example. Now, that's high praise from Eddie Howe. And maybe Eddie is disappointed with what he saw from Joe Willock. And maybe the penny's dropped with Eddie Howe to say, I can't keep this lad out of the first team anymore. He has to start games. Because even at 18 years old, Lewis Miley wants the ball all the time. He can use the ball very well. He doesn't get flustered. He started to get more aggressive in his game. He's filled out over the summer. I watched him come on in that game, and we were dead and buried. We were 3-0 down by that point. And you wouldn't have thought it. The way he was dropping deep, he was showing for the ball, little 1-2s, moving around, started getting in the box, took a shot as well. It was a weak shot. You know, he should have put his laces behind it like he did against Bromley. Maybe could have went in the top corner and he would have deserved that goal. But Lewis Miley looked like he wanted to play in that game. He looked like he wanted to show how good he could be. His senior midfield colleagues around him didn't show that in the first half. And by the time the second half started, the game was gone anyway. But the time has come right now to stop giving opportunities to players who keep throwing it away whenever they get it, in the shape of Sean Longstaff and Joe Willock in particular. Now, Joe Willock had horrific abuse for missing that shot against Fulham the other weekend. I don't condone that at all. I don't condone abuse of any player, Sean, Joe Willock, anybody, right? But you can criticise him when he's not playing well. I don't like these fucking melts that come at people and go, oh, back the lads, why are you criticising them? It's your God-given right as a football fan to criticise someone's performance if you don't think he's good enough on the pitch that day. That is football. That, for me, will never change. You're allowed to do that. There's certain ways you can articulate that, but you're allowed to do that as a football fan. And on our channel, you're allowed to criticise a player without getting attacked. I'm criticising Joe Willock because the Birmingham game aside, where he played really well, you know, he scored 2 goals and had a hand in the other. That was League One opposition, by the way. Every time he's had a chance in the Premier League, he's not taking it. And for me, this is one chance too many. Lewis Miley has to start against Nottingham Forest. He has to come in and he has to start in that midfield 3. And I think that would give us a lot more calmness on the ball because we'll probably have more of the ball at home against Forest. They'll expect us to come on to them. They'll absorb the pressure. Then they'll hit us with Alanga's pace, with Anderson's running, with Chris Wood, you know, holding the ball up and bringing us into play like Callum Hudson-Odoi on the other side. They will want us to come on to them. So therefore, we need to use the ball better. And it has to be Lewis Miley in that midfield 3 with Bruno and Sandro. Both, by the way, were dog shit against Man City. The worst performances I've seen from them two in a long, long time. They need to be better than that, and they know that. Bruno's come out and said how bad we were. But you need to look in the mirror as well, Bruno, because you were just as bad, if not the worst out of everybody on the pitch. You were terrible. You know, Cher was the worst out of everybody on the pitch, to be honest with you. He was fucking awful. But Lewis Miley has to come into that midfield now. When Joelinton is out, Lewis Miley has to be the 4th choice midfielder out of everybody. He is the best player by a mile to step in when Joelinton is in there. And arguably, in some games, I would put him in ahead of Joelinton. The games where we have more of the ball and we don't have to go and press people and aggressively get in their faces and win it back, Lewis Miley is the better option than Joelinton because Joelinton is poor on the ball. He's passing his lackadaisical. His touch is bad. You know, yes, he's a monster and he's got speed and all that stuff. And Louis isn't the quickest, but Louis is better on the ball than Joelinton. And at 18 years old, he's getting better and better every fucking game that he plays. You can't keep this lad on the sidelines anymore, anyhow. You have to bring him in to the starting 11 in the absence of Joelinton. He has to do that. We've got massive games coming up. This defeat was quite a sobering reality check, I feel, to show the deficiencies of this squad are still there, regardless of the elation of getting to the Carabao Cup final. Champions League is paramount for us this season. We have to get Champions League if we want to keep a hold of Alexander Isak, Bruno Guimaraes, Anthony Gordon, Sven Botman. We need to get Champions League football. 5th place is enough to secure it. Newcastle need to sort their shit out and get to that 5th position without any additions in the transfer window, which I think was a massive gamble that hasn't paid off. They have to get back to that run of form where they can press teams, intensity, look after the ball well when we're the ones who are expected to come onto the opposition. We have to get the selection right. Eddie hopefully is going to go and look at that game and realise that some of them players in that squad that he's gave the chance to, that he's give his loyalty to, have let him down, not just in that game, but a lot of games. Bar the Southampton game in the Premier League, we've been off form for a good few weeks now. The cup games are different. We've showed up in them, but we have not showed up in this game in particular. So that's my aftermath thought on that. Let us know in the comments below what you guys think about that. For me, like I say, some of them players really are living a charmed existence in this starting lineup. But we always like to hear from you. Like and subscribe. Smash a comment and we'll do a best to reply to you. Keep it evermore. We'll be back soon with some more content. Have a belter. We'll see you later. Cheers.